So here we are with a review of Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, Zack Snyder's long-awaited, by some, wrap-up to his Rebel Moon two-part epic. So in this one, Cora, once again played by Sofia Boutella, and the rebels she recruited prepare to do battle with the full force of Atticus Noble's Motherworld army. So I have to say something. I took a little bit of heat for my fairly positive review of Rebel Moon Part 1 a few months ago, but I make no apologies for the fact that I found it to be an immersive, entertaining epic. I liked it a lot more than the last few Star Wars movies, to be honest, especially Rise of Skywalker. So I was eager to see the story reach its conclusion with Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. And while it's an entertaining, action-packed end to the saga, it's also a clear-cut case of why Snyder's longer director's cuts should have really been the only ones ever hitting Netflix, as even more so than in the first film, this feels awkwardly fast-paced and almost anti-climactic at times, due to the story having simply no room to breathe. Everything just happens bam, 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 and it's kind of exhausting. Indeed, a lot more of the intriguing plot points hinted at in the first film, such as the robot Jimmy's resistance to the Motherworld, are only given a half-baked examination here. Rather, the film just plunges you right back into the action without taking any time to breathe. It's also worth noting that Zack Snyder's Seven Samurai, Magnificent Seven inspirations are even more on the nose here, with whole sequences seeming lifted out of those movies, especially as our rebel heroes make themselves known to the Veld. In my interview with Zack Snyder, he mentioned that each director's cut runs about an hour longer, meaning you're essentially getting a new film tacked on, and I have no doubt that the longer cuts of these movies will simply work better. Especially in this case, you feel like you're watching a tease for a much better, longer epic. That said, a lot of it still worked for me on a basic level, with Sofia Boutella once again an action heroine you could root for as the self-sacrificing, haunted Cora, whose past transgressions make her a more tortured heroine this time. The burgeoning romance between her and Michiel Huisman's Gunner comes to a fitting conclusion, with him emerging as perhaps one of the most heroic of the rebels, even if he's not really a warrior on par with any of them. Daemon Hunsu also finally gets his due, with Titus's backstory filled out and him emerging as almost the second lead. Yet, some of the other rebels, particularly Staz Nair's Tarak, are given very little to do, with it feeling like the movie's simply overstuffed with plot lines. Of everyone, it's really only Boutella, Huisman, Hunsu, and Dunabey's Nemesis who are allowed to make any kind of impact. It should also be said that the returning villain, Ed Skrine's Noble, is played a bit differently this time, with him somewhat more desperate and humbled since his defeat in the first film, which is a nice added layer for a baddie who initially came off as cartoonishly two-dimensional. Again, though, we needed a lot more time with the forces of the Motherworld, in particular Farfee's Belisarius, who really only gets one big scene to show off his menacing side. As far as the action goes, this is very much in the vein expected from a Zack Snyder epic, tons of slow motion and self-sacrifice. Some may find this cheesy, but if you jump into Rebel Moon expecting anything else, maybe you don't really know what Zack Snyder's all about, so why bother? While I enjoyed Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, overall, I'll admit that taken together, the movies feel like a tease for something a lot bigger and a lot better. No doubt the director's cut will be the true judge of whether or not the franchise has really worked for Snyder and Netflix. If you felt the first part of the movie felt compromised, this won't feel any more complete. As much as I had a decent time watching the two films together, it's maybe not the worst idea just to wait out the director's cuts when they're finally out this summer, and watch the full proper version of these movies rather than these kind of cut down PG-13 versions. Maybe waiting is a better idea, but as it is, I'd still give it a relatively generous 6 out of 10. I still enjoyed these movies. They're a lot of fun. People will disagree with me, but hey, what can I do? Make sure to let me know in the comments what you think of this review, because by the time it comes out, guess what? The movie will already be available on Netflix. So let me know what you thought.